Congratulations.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
Somebody just said congratulations. That's because about 2 minutes ago, the vote was closed confirming Rob Cicada as the new. While it would appear that we have impeccable timing, it's actually not true. When we tried to predict what the Senate was going to do a couple weeks ago, we anticipated that Rob would be confirmed a couple days ago, which would have allowed us to actually have a commission signed and to swear Rob in today, which we're not able to do because, like I said, his vote was literally just confirmed 2 minutes ago. So once again, I don't know what's happening in Washington, which is fine. A little bit about Rob, in case you don't know. He began his law enforcement career with the New York City Police Department in 1992, starting in the Housing Bureau in Harlem. He moved around. He was promoted to detective in the Organized Crime Bureau's gang division, later continued his public service with the City of Plantation Police Department in Broward County, Florida, serving in patrol operations on the SWAT team. And then in 2005, so over 20 years ago, Rob joined ATF as a special agent in the Baltimore Field Division, where he was assigned to the Regional Area Gang Enforcement Task Force, combating transnational organized crime. He later served as a special agent in the Tampa Field Division, investigating violent crimes involving firearms and explosives, and continuing working his way up through the ATF ranks over the 2 decades. Eventually, he was promoted to SES at ATF, and he was a special agent in charge at the Baltimore Field Division, where he oversaw operations across Maryland and Delaware. Subsequently, he was a special agent in charge in Miami, where he oversaw 21 offices throughout southern Florida, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. After that, Rob returned to ATF headquarters as the Deputy Assistant Director for Field Operations. He was then promoted again to Executive Assistant Director of Operations, and then just over 1 year ago today, on April 10th, 2025, Rob was named the Deputy Director of ATF, a role that he has served in through today, and right now he's in that middle spot where he is the confirmed Director of ATF, but commission not signed. So I think still technically Deputy Director, but we're fine. So from patrol officer to federal agent to special agent in charge, Rob has committed his entire life to serving the public and protecting communities nationwide. I know this personally. He's a dedicated father to Robbie and Gianna, a husband to Leah. He loves to fish, and he loves Florida. So congratulations, Rob. It's great. I also want to take a moment to thank Secretary Dan Driscoll, who has been serving for over a year as the acting director of the ATF, and he's also the Secretary of the Army, as most of you all know. And that job is a full-time job, but I can tell you from my role as the Deputy Attorney General, and I know I speak for Rob as well, that Dan was a committed supporter and leader at the ATF. He has done everything within his power to do his job over the past year at the ATF, and supported its mission, supported the 1811s that work, keeping us safe every day. And so a really big thanks to Secretary Driscoll for everything that he did over the past year. And we're now happily able to tell him that within the next couple days, he'll be able to go back to just being the Secretary of the Army. It is fitting, in my mind, that the first action Rob is going to take today in his new role is to sign the most comprehensive regulatory reform package in the history of ATF. I want to thank President Donald Trump for putting us on this path on January 20th of last year. His leadership made this moment possible. His executive order directing a full review of ATF regulations set the tone, clear, direct, and focused on the Constitution, and I want to thank him for his leadership. It's been over a year, but we're ready to get it rolling. I also want to thank ATF General Counsel Rob Leiter, who's here with us today as well. He has poured his heart and soul into this rewrite, but also his brains. I mean, he's a brilliant attorney. He knows the Second Amendment better than probably most people in this country, and he has worked tirelessly for over a year getting to us to where we are today. And so thank you, Rob, very much for your commitment to the rule of law and commitment to what we're doing today. So what are we doing? We're repealing rules that went beyond what the law allows. We are cutting unnecessary red tape, and we are replacing confusion with clear, straightforward language so that everyday Americans don't need a law degree just to understand their rights. And this did not happen in a vacuum. We listened to industry leaders, many of whom are in this room behind me, to legal experts, and most importantly, to law-abiding gun owners across this country. People who follow the rules but have been forced to navigate a system that often didn't make sense. The package that we're putting forward today and over the coming days reflects all of those voices. It includes 34 proposed rules, more than ATF has issued in the last 15 years combined. It reflects months of work since the beginning of this administration, and I want to be candid right now about why this is necessary. For too long, regulations were written without any real understanding of how firearms businesses operate, how lawful gun owners actually handle their firearms, or what truly improves public safety. Nothing we are doing today weakens law enforcement. We are not taking tools away from the people, the men and women who go after violent criminals. This administration, as it always has, remains fully committed to targeting those who break the law: gang members, repeat offenders, traffickers, and cartels. We will, as we always have done, continue to follow the evidence, continue to aggressively prosecute violent crime. If anything, what we're doing today will actually help law enforcement, because clearer rules mean better compliance, and better compliance means better enforcement. At the same time, it means fewer traps for law-abiding citizens who are just trying to do the right thing. This package also brings into line ATF regulations with the law and with recent Supreme Court precedent. It reduces unnecessary burdens on lawful gun owners and licensed businesses. It eliminates ambiguity, and it helps prevent the kind of confusion that in the past, and not that distant past, led to inconsistent and sometimes unfair enforcement. I'm going to let Rob lay out the specifics of what we're doing in a moment, but let me reiterate that the Second Amendment will never be treated as a second-class right in the Trump administration. President Trump has been clear on this from day one. The Second Amendment is not negotiable. It is part of the foundation of this great country. And under his leadership, this administration, this Justice Department is acting on that belief. I want to make sure folks understand that the work that we're talking about today is not finished today. We're continuing to review every regulation, especially those from the previous administration, and we'll keep putting forward additional proposals as that review continues. For example, ATF is studying right now to determine which rifles are generally recognized as particularly suitable for sporting purposes. That's going to be an ongoing effort over the next several months, and we're going to see that through. But okay, so let's get what we're here to do. I'm going to close by saying that, and I hope folks in this room know that this is absolutely true. Rob is exactly the right person to lead ATF at this moment. First, he owns more guns than I think pretty much anyone I know. He's one heck of a shot. I've seen him at the range. I've shot with him at the range. He's a lot better than me. But more importantly, he understands this work inside and out. He understands the mission, and he understands the importance of getting it right. So welcome please to the microphone the newly confirmed Director of the ATF, Rob Cicada.
Good afternoon. Thank you again to President Trump, the Acting Attorney General, and DOJ for their leadership and partnership. Today's a great day for ATF, DOJ, and a great day for lawful gun owners and federal firearms licensees, and a great day for all of America. While I'm proud to be one to represent ATF today, this moment is not about me or any one individual. Credit for today goes to the entirety of DOJ and ATF teams, their regulatory teams, legal teams, administrative and operational staff. It is because of their collective efforts over the last year that a day like today came together with 34 new proposals. Let me put that number into perspective. I've been with ATF for over 20 years. I've never seen a regulatory package of this scale. In fact, we are going to be signing just about as many rules as have been proposed during my entire 20 years with this agency. It was an immense amount of work, and I believe it's moving the agency in the right direction. Again, my sincere thanks go to ATF and our DOJ teams for putting this package together. How did we get here? At the outset of this administration, we committed to a new era of reform grounded in transparency, accountability, and partnership. What you see today is that promise being kept. Over the last year, we undertook a serious, sustained review looking at court decisions, license feedback, statutory text. We reviewed our forms and our requirements. We spoke with stakeholders, we worked closely with the DOJ leadership team, and we identified those regulations that needed reform. In my time with ATF, I've seen how regulation creep can come in like a fog, creating vague and shifting tests and subjective interpretations that lead to inconsistent enforcement practices and ultimately an erosion of public trust. Today, we are clearing the fog, restoring clarity, consistency, and predictability for all Americans. In today's package, you will see 34 clear, common-sense regulations that rescind, modernize, or clarify language within the National Firearms Act, the Gun Control Act, and more. We are proposing to remove unnecessary hurdles that were standing in the way of law-abiding citizens and businesses. We are proposing to restore clarity and predictability in our standards. We are beginning responsive to court orders that our constituents needed for clear, decisive instruction so action can be taken to rescind what didn't work. As a personal remark, I'd be remiss if I didn't add here that we did and always will take public safety into account when creating proposals. I've been a law enforcement officer for over 34 years, and I believe me when I tell you that I take public safety seriously, and I would never let the public be at risk based on the regulations that we are proposing today. ATF remains the greatest friend to state and local law enforcement officers, and we believe that these rules will not negatively impact public safety. With that, here are some key highlights. The stabilizing brace rule, which came into effect in 2023, that rule we are proposing to rescind. There are courts in multiple jurisdictions which we found violated the APA. They were enjoined or vacated across the country. We believe that the common sense approach to align regulatory text with those judicial determinations rather than keeping them on the books as regulations would have already been thrown out. Engage in the business, which came into effect in 2024. We are also formally proposing to rescind the engage in the business rule. We believe that the responsible regulatory governance requires adjusting the course when evidence shows a rule has not worked as intended. The ATF has found the changes to the definition of who was engaged in business have not produced the outcomes needed to justify keeping the rule. As you'll see, today's proposed rule retains definition of the engage in the business as specifically revised and codified by Congress. No more, no less. We are also formally proposing modernizing our forms. One proposal is to update the Form 4473 to ensure it keeps pace with modern business practices, like authorizing the use of electronic forms. Functions like auto-population of fields and allowing people to attach digital files as attachments. We also make minor technical revisions to shorten the form, thereby reducing the administrative burden on both the FFLs and transferees. Another proposal related to the forms is to allow FFLs to generate and store its records, including its A&D books, records, and all 48473s using an electronic record-keeping system. This codifies a practice that the industry has used through a variance for years and has been demonstrated to work very well. We also believe it supports law enforcement by allowing FFLs to more easily respond to legitimate law enforcement trace requests when asked. In our next steps, there are many more proposals in the package that will follow this rule package. Some of them are simple language clarifications, others are much more comprehensive. I believe we will talk about them in broad strokes when we sign, but considering how many there are, we simply don't have time to go through them in detail now. Our plan is to hold over the next few weeks some stakeholder briefings, which we will meet with you in smaller, more focused groups and dive deep into the regulations that will affect each of you the most. I will do my best to be at each of these meetings, but today, more importantly, here with me today is Chief Counsel Robert Leiter, who's probably going to be the most helpful to you in those briefings. He's a legal scholar on the Second Amendment, a professor, and has been instrumental during his time as Chief Counsel at getting us to this point. I can assure you that he can handle all of your technical questions. I really appreciate you all being here. I thank you. Robert, I thank you for ensuring our stakeholder groups get the information that they need. For now, moving forward, the proposed and final rules in this regulatory package are going to be sent over to the Federal Register, where they will be published in short order. In the interim, we do have summaries of the proposals on our website, and as soon as they are published in the Federal Register, we will have links to where you can submit your public comments. Finally, as Acting Attorney General Blanche shared, our work is not done. While we are proud of our work that has been done in getting us to this point, this isn't over. The next step will be an open comment period where we invite input on our proposed changes from our industry stakeholders, law enforcement agencies, advocacy groups, and the general public. After today's event, please visit our website, atf.gov, to find out more about the proposals we are signing and sending over to the Federal Register to be published. There you will find information on how to submit comments via regulations.gov. And this Acting Attorney General Blanche shared today is just the first package of proposals to be released. We will work closely with the Department of Justice to continue to review our rules and ensure they are modernized to reflect current practices, to adhere to court rulings, and ultimately to reduce unnecessary burdens on law-abiding citizens and businesses. With that, let's get started with signing.
All right, the first group of regulations repeals regulations that are inconsistent with law, including the engage in the business rule and the stabilizing brace rule, as you mentioned. All right. Second group is clarifying regulations that are clarifying. So these are going to clarify, for example, who is adjudicated for purposes of the mental disability to prevent the disarming of veterans. It is also going to define who constitutes a straw purchaser, and will clarify also how to certain markings for the National Firearms Act. And among the most important rules, will clarify what willfulness means for the purposes of the Gun Control Act and revocation of federal firearms licenses. Thank you. All right. This group of regulations will modernize the current regulations. So it includes a new 4473, which is the firearms transaction form, which will be simpler and less apt of making the kinds of paperwork errors that resulted in the zero tolerance policies of the prior administration. It also authorizes electronic record keeping, and it revises the firearm record retention period from forever to a defined term of years that will be determined through notice and comment, including for the out-of-business records that are currently held by ATF forever. That will be reduced to a specified time period as well. right, the next group of regulations will align ATF regulations with the law. It includes new provisions that are simpler for interstate transport of National Firearms Act firearms. It also includes some conforming changes in how we process National Firearms Act limitations, and it implements the One Big Beautiful Bill Act regarding the tax remittance. All right, and the final group of regulations reduces burdens on law-abiding gun owners. This includes, for example, clarifying how gun owners may transport their firearms interstate, particularly when they're going between modes of transportation, such as vehicles to airplanes. It also has a host of other simplifications for the processing of forms under the National Firearms Act, and also recognizes the ability, for example, of spouses to jointly register firearms that they may be in joint possession of.
Thank you. All right, thanks a lot, Rob, and thanks to our newly confirmed director of the ATF. I'm happy to take some questions. I know there's a lot going on. I want to try to keep the questions at least primarily to the reason why we're here today. So the ATF regulations are the recent confirmation of the director of ATF, but we're happy to take some questions. Go ahead.
The rollbacks are very popular with
Can you speak up just a little bit? The acoustics not great.
These rollbacks are very popular with gun rights organizations, but at the same time, the Justice Department is still in court defending gun control provisions, like disarming people who are regular users of marijuana or those who have other nonviolent drug convictions. Is the Justice Department reconsidering at all how it will approach nonviolent gun cases?
Yes, of course we are. So we've been doing that for a year and 2 months. Every case is different. The facts leading up to where we are in a litigation is different, whether we're at the district court level, whether we're at the Court of Appeals, the basis for the district court's decision. And so it's not rational or it's not possible for us to just unwind on a given Monday. We just recently got out of a case 2 weeks ago that had been pending for a long time. And so I think that we've recently argued some cases in front of the Supreme Court. We've had some cases in the Court of Appeals. And this is something that we're looking carefully at case by case to make sure that we are doing the right thing consistent with the Constitution, consistent with the Second Amendment, consistent with this administration's priorities. And so, yes, it's not as smooth as a single day, but it's also not as clunky as taking forever.
And a second question for you, sir. Has law enforcement confirmed who fired the shot that hit the Secret Service officer on Saturday night?
So I understand that there is leaks around that, but I'm not going to get ahead of the work of the law enforcement. It would not surprise me if it turns out that that our Secret Service agent was shot by the individual who's currently been charged with that crime. But that is something that would be wildly inappropriate for me to comment on beyond saying just that. Just because when we know something, I'm sure that we will let the folks know. But I just want to get that right instead of speculate. Alex.
My question is actually for Rob. Congratulations on your confirmation.
Sorry, which Rob?
Congratulations on your confirmation. I guess my question, a lot of Second Amendment advocates have been pushing for a lot of these regulations, many of them also pushing for the full abolishing of the ATF. I guess as you take on this role, what is your best defense of ATF's continued existence? And then I'll have an off-topic after that.
Sure. I won't speak for all of them, but I think we have a very good relationship, despite what may go on publicly. We all have to be, I guess, part of a show publicly at times. But I will say that we've all been able to have very good discussions about what their concerns are as to what our concerns are relating to public safety and maintaining a balance without actually using public safety as a crutch to use as an excuse to infringe on someone who is a law-abiding American citizen and us infringing on their Second Amendment rights. I think ATF has historically, and I can say for sure over the past year and a half, under this administration in particular, we've been 1,000% focused on violent criminals and looking to hold people accountable for crimes they commit using firearms illegally or crimes that involve arson or explosives. And we will continue doing that.
Todd, so sort of related, Second Amendment, a First Amendment question, obviously in light of yesterday's indictments. I wonder if it's the Justice Department's position that anybody who posts the numbers 8647 is subject to potential investigation and potential criminal charges.
Look, every case is different. Every threats case is different. And so that means that there can, what does that mean? That means that the nature of the threat, the person who makes this threat, and then the investigation around the threat. And so you cannot, it would be ill-advised for anybody to compare a particular statement to another statement that appears similar when there's been a thorough investigation. Nobody in this room has any idea what happened during a grand jury investigation between May 15th and yesterday. And so that's reflective of the work that the FBI, the Secret Service, U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of North Carolina did. And so I mean, you know that every time that's posted, that number is posted, you know that every time there is a threat against the president, it doesn't necessarily lead to an indictment. It depends. It depends on the investigation. It depends on all kinds of factors. And so it's not, people should be very wary of threatening the life of President Trump, because that is a crime. Full stop. Okay. Now, whether it's a crime that we will ultimately charge, depending on, you mentioned the First Amendment, sure, or other investigative steps or things that we learn or things that we uncover from talking to witnesses, reviewing evidence. So on the one hand, the fact that people are questioning why we would be, there should be no doubt you cannot threaten the life of the President of the United States. Can't do it, okay? And so beyond that, I'm not going to comment. We've had an indictment returned by a grand jury in North Carolina. I think my understanding is Mr. Comey appeared in court in Virginia today. I'm not sure the schedule beyond that. I haven't caught up to folks about that. But he will be given every single right, every single opportunity to defend his case in court. And the U.S. Attorney's Office should be given every single right to do exactly what they have a right to do as well. Other questions? Yep, ma'am.
Can you please explain the timing of today's announcement? I know some Republicans have supported some of these, Republicans in the Senate have supported some of these regulations that you are now abolishing. Was there any fear that these regulations could hurt Mr. Cicada's chances of getting confirmed? And maybe can you talk about what types of discussions you had about these regulations with members of the Senate, Democrats and Republicans?
The timing, I said this in the beginning, I wasn't making it up. It's largely coincidental. I mean, we scheduled this a couple weeks ago. Once we were ready to roll out the regulations, I had hoped that the math would line up so that there could be a signed commission today. It turns out not only is there not a signed commission, but he was confirmed literally moments before we walked out. That's, welcome to Washington. But as far as, yes, of course we talk to members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, people who are for these regulations, people who are against these regulations. That's our job. And what we are trying to do, and what I think what Rob Leiter did, what the ATF did, working with the Department of Justice, is to bring these regulations into a place where they need to be, whether it's compliance with the Supreme Court, compliance with the law, catching up to modernization. I mean, you had situations where that were just, you heard us talk about it in big terms, like we're just allowing for the filing of electronic forms. Shouldn't shock anybody in this room, okay? So there's things like that. And then there's ones that are maybe considered more controversial. Okay, I mean, President Trump, this administration, this newly confirmed director of the ATF views the Second Amendment as nothing other than one of the most important amendments in our Constitution. It's not a second-class amendment, and so the regulations that we're adjusting today reflect that the policies of President Trump, but they happen to be the policies of the Department of Justice and the ATF as well.
Okay, Stephen Gutaski, Reload. Obviously, the Biden administration tried a number of rules, including two today that you're welcoming back. They ran into a lot of trouble in court by going pretty far in some of these regards. And additionally, so did President Trump in his first term with the bump stock ban when the Supreme Court declared that unconstitutional. How confident are you that these 34 rules are going to hold up to legal scrutiny?
You mean whether I have optimism that they're going to survive scrutiny in the courts? That's the question?
To try and avoid legal trouble in courts, or were you trying to push the envelope?
I mean, look, I went and found the smartest guy in the country who clerked for Justice Thomas and asked him to make sure that we put together regs that are not only consistent with the Second Amendment and our priorities, but also going to hold up in court. I'm confident. I think there's a lot of litigation that's ongoing. The Supreme Court has a couple cases pending right now that we'll get before the end of this term. There's a lot of folks behind me that will let us know if we're doing something wrong or if we're doing something right. There's a lot of folks out there, advocacy groups, that'll do the same thing, and we'll go from there. All right, I'll just take one more question.
Under the Justice Manual, you're not supposed to bring forward a case unless you're relatively confident that it will result in...
Thank you for telling me about the Justice Manual. I appreciate that.
Sure, no problem. Obviously, you won't.
Yeah, no problem.
I was just wondering, how confident are you that the James Comey case will result ultimately in a conviction in federal court?
If there's a prosecutor in this country that speaks about what a jury will do, they are not living up to their oath. I know that a grand jury returned a 2-count indictment. I know that this case was investigated for the past year. I do not know what a jury of his peers will do at a trial that will come at some point in the future. All right, thanks a lot, guys.